There is a voice the sea uses when it wishes to be heard very softly, a slow, polite ping that returns as a shape. And if you listen without haste, it will sketch for you the contours of things hidden where light grows thin. On a calm deck at night, the hull speaks in low, even phrases. Instruments converse in tiny clicks. A technician leans forward, and the small sound of a gloved finger on a screen becomes, briefly, a kind of prayer. It is a curious fact that geometry and accident often meet on the seabed. A line on a monitor may be the patient work of fracture as readily as the faint legacy of a hand. We will therefore proceed with modesty, to attend to the ping, to the slow registers of sediment, and to the small human gestures that surround an instrument's glow, checking a cable, whispering a coordinate, pausing to let the echo finish. Let your breath be companion to that pulse. Inhale, hold a beat, release, and let the deep suggestion lie against your ear like a lullaby, not insisting, not alarming, only keeping time in the dark so that memory might be gently coaxed forward. There are moments when the world, having been altered by degrees, seems to answer us in textures rather than proclamations. The lost literal of ancient Cuba answers in the language of stone and tide, in a grammar of ripple and smoothness that the attentive ear may translate into human habit if it cares to do so. Softly, imagine, then, a shore that is not the jagged edge of myth, but a sequence of patient gestures, inlet by inlet, terrace by terrace, where people set small stones to make a landing, where they train nets upon predictable shoals, where the rhythm of work matched the slow breathing of tides. One might begin, for the sake of clarity, with the notion of scale. The shelf where these shapes now lie was once an extension of the living shore. In those long-vanished years, the sea kept company with human hands, and the meeting place was practical rather than monumental. Picture narrow quays, not colossal piers. Raised platforms where fish could be salted and woven baskets dried in the sun. The soft routine of sandals shuffling on picked stone. The acoustic life of such a coastline is modest and domestic. The clink of ceramic bowls, the thin slap of a net against a wooden gunwale, the low, repetitive calls of those who trade in small goods. Above such sounds there is the constant, unintrusive music of water, the lapping that marks a day into sections, the hush in a cut between tides, the hollow, slow sigh when a storm rearranges the sand. To reconstruct this world orally is to attend to texture. The stone that now appears on a screen as a right angle may once have been a rounded step, smoothed by 1,000 slippers and by the small, insistently patient action of hands arranging shorelines to human comfort. Imagine the feeling under the palm, porous, warm in the sun, flecked with the salt of evaporated spray. Imagine the sound when a shell is set down on such a stone, a delicate, bell-like chime, more intimate than celebratory. The smells are equally precise: marine oil on rope, the faint sour of fermenting fish, the sharp green of crushed leaf used for curing. All these compound to form an atmosphere that is at once practical and quietly rich. There is a communal choreography to such places, an economy of small acts that accumulates into what we call culture. At dawn, a group gathers to repair nets. The sound is a patterned, patient rasp, fingers moving with the know-how of generations. Later, children practice the rhythms of counting by clapping across the steps. 1 clack for an oar, 2 clacks for a net cast, so that instruction and play share cadence and meter. In the evening, when light softens and the sea again becomes a mirror, elders sit upon the quay shore and hum low tunes whose phrases map the year. The early note for planting, a muted phrase for storms, a rising intonation for returns of fish. These songs are not ornate. They are functional lullabies, rhythms that train bodies and memories to the patterns of water. One must not, however, imagine the literal as placid or unchanging. Shorelines are, in their nature, negotiators between land and sea, and they ebb and thicken according to weather, season, and larger climatic moods. A sudden squall will transform the acoustic scene. First, the tightening of sail seams, a sharper creak of ropes, then the muted thunder as waves break upon a newly exposed shoal, then the heavy, restorative hush as the storm passes and the community performs a small liturgy of repair, nets mended, stones relaid, the hush of hands working at low light. Such sequences, repeated over decades, leave marks both on artifact and in song. Songs gain a pause after the word for storm. Artisans adjust the radius of their baskets. Elders teach a slightly different verse to children who must now read new tides. It is a curious fact that the human scale of work is often misread as insignificance by those seeking grand narratives. Yet it is precisely in these modest operations that durable things are made. A small fish trap, set in a channel and reinforced annually, will over generations accumulate an architecture, stones nudged into place to channel water, then cemented by sediment and shell. When the sea later reclaims that shore, the aggregate of small decisions may appear upon a sonar display as an ordered ensemble, rows, angles, apparent regularity. Does such an appearance imply design of high intent, or does it simply testify to the power of repetition? One might suppose the former, but the more measured interpretation often honors the latter. The slow arts of habit create shapes that the deep, when left to itself, preserves in a softened, coral-encrusted register. If, in your imagining, you find the urge to anthropomorphize stone, that it might have once been carried by hands with the intention to build a temple or palace, restrain that fancy slightly, and instead picture domesticity. A hand-placed ledge for the convenience of unloading a boat, a stepped approach to a salt pan where women would spread fish and measure sun for preservation, a shallow channel where boats with modest keels could lie becalmed at low tide. These are not the monuments of empire. They are the modest scaffolding of daily life, and it is precisely their ordinariness that makes them touching when rediscovered. A day in such a place begins with water and ends with measurement. The morning's first action might be to test a sluice, a small knock against a stone, a brief listen for the muffled tone as the water settles. The farmer then watches the film of reflected sky until the correct depth is achieved. There is a currency of silence here, longer than speech but not empty. The wait between opening and flow is instructive, and it is encoded into habit. In the marketplace, trade is measured not by loud bargaining but by a patient exchange of breath. A seller presents an item, the buyer weighs it in hand. A long exhale signals agreement. These quiet economies sustain communities. They are the slow currency that ties a shore to human presence. Night is especially telling. When the sun falls and the sea cools, the acoustic field simplifies. Nocturnal crustaceans click beneath stones. The distant murmur of a boat's hull is a soft, repetitive creak like a metronome. Voices in the dark are lower, attenuated by the cool. In such hours, rituals assume a stillness that both comforts and teaches. A watchman may sing a measured line into the dark to mark the hour. A mother may count her child's breaths by an ancient coastal refrain. The night compresses events into syllables and thus preserves them in a compact mnemonic geometry, phrases that will, perhaps, survive as the last echo of a place whose physical contours are later changed. There are also the noises of craft. The rasp of an adze shaping a support beam, the soft ring of a chisel on softer stone when repairing a fish sorting bin, the neat, repetitive clack when a bead is strung upon cord. Each sound, in its specificity, teaches us about taste and economy. The choice of cord thickness, the pitch of a bell attached to a net, the preferred timber for a keel, these are aesthetic decisions articulated through material and sound. In the archive of the sea, they survive as impressions, the microgroove in a ceramic rim, the mineralized pattern where a post once stood. Scholars, modest in voice, will point to such traces and say, with a cautious admiration. This suggests a practiced hand. Climate and pattern occasion further texture. In times of generous monsoon, the acoustics of abundance are loud with activity. More feet on quays, the intensified slap of fish upon boards, a chorus of barter. In lean years, the soundscape changes. There is less laughter, the market's rhythm thins, and songs take on a different register. A minor refrain, perhaps, that acknowledges scarcity while teaching thrift. These shifts influence migration, marriage patterns, and the very structure of households. The smallness of such adjustments should not mislead us. Cumulative absence breeds profound change. A market that thins becomes a memory in the mouths of those left behind, and the story of abundance becomes an elegy sung to children as instruction. It is also worthy to note the role of weather in shaping Stone's memory. Storm surges will scour coasts fast, rearranging sands and exposing hidden ledges. After a major event, there is a particular acoustic signature, the long, distracted tapping of hands as people unmoor drifted boats, the wet scrape of seaweed across rock, the soft, relieved laughter when a stored barrel is found intact. In this way, human voices annotate the geologic record with moments of relief or loss. The sea writes with water, people write with breath. Throughout these scenes, an important device is the presence of names, toponyms that record the tiny facts of habitation. A small inlet might be called the Quiet Step, another Salt's Edge. Such names, spoken over generations, carry ecological knowledge. Where a shoal forms, when a channel is likely to deepen, what reed indicates safe footing. It is a matter of some wonder how oral maps preserve practical wisdom with an economy of phrase. When those names are later recited, as happens in rediscovery dialogues, they function as anchors. They allow researchers to orient instruments to places the human eye would otherwise treat as undifferentiated. And what of religion, of belief? Where water is central to life, water becomes a metaphor and a deity. Small shrines at quaysides, stones arranged with modest offerings of shell and seed, are as much pragmatic as pious. They are acts of care, meant to coax the sea into predictability. A ritual washing of nets might precede a community's passage from bounty to storage. Such acts produce sound, soft clapping to frighten birds from drying fish, the low intonation of a prayer, the rustle of offerings, and these sounds, repeated, become part of the acoustic architecture. When later found, such arrangements sometimes appear indistinguishable from simple stonework on sonar. Only the knowledge of practice gives them meaning. Lastly, imagine the final hours of ordinary life on such a shore, not a catastrophe, but a series of small departures. Families pack a few vessels, tie cord with particular knots, and set off at dawn. The leaving is not practiced as drama. It is performed as routine, a rope coiled differently, a small chest lifted with a quiet sigh, a child's counting song shortened to a single phrase. The acoustic memory of such a departure is faint, the far-off slap of an oar, a mother's voice reciting a line once more, the slow, responsible humming of a cart on a newly abandoned lane. Over time, as these departures accumulate, the shore's human music thins until the stones lie in near silence, ready, perhaps, to be read by a machine or recalled in an elder's tale. Then, to the lost literal not as a stage of ruin, but as a place of measured habit. Its music is slender but precise. Its architecture may be modest yet deliberate. If the sonar presents regularity now, remember that regularity could simply be the record of countless small, human choices, steps placed for unloading, ledges arranged for drying, channels nudged to improve flow. Each such act is a note in a score that, when read backwards, tells of a life lived in the sound of water and the warmth of domestic labor. There comes, inevitably, a time when even the most familiar coast begins to alter its voice. The songs that once echoed from the harbor walls become, little by little, out of tune with the sea's own rhythm. The wind forgets old paths, currents shift their allegiance, and what was once home becomes uncertain ground. It is in this uneasy interval, neither catastrophe nor peace, that the story of the submerged stone city begins its long descent into silence. It is a curious matter how loss begins, not with the roar of the sea or the shattering of walls, but with subtler omens, the duller sound of oars against water, the strange weight of air before rain. Old fishermen, one imagines, would have noted such things with mild concern. The tides are thinking, they might have said, for the ancients often ascribed thought to the sea. They believed that the ocean, vast and slow, possessed its own contemplations, that when it withdrew, it was pondering, when it advanced, it was remembering. In the years before the drowning, the sea, it seems, remembered too much. The slow submission. It is a theory among scholars that the end of that literal civilization was not sudden but patient, a submission rather than a struggle. The waters rose in inches, not torrents. Generations lived and died, while their harbor steps sank by the width of a hand. The people adjusted with quiet ingenuity, rebuilding higher, planting reeds where streets had once been, marking the years by how far the tide climbed each solstice. There are faint signs in the archaeological record, layers of silt interwoven with pottery shards, suggesting not a single flood but a dialogue between persistence and inevitability. One might picture the sound of that surrender. The murmur of workers stacking stones higher, the gentle splash of water against new foundations, the sigh of clay jars being relocated uphill. There would have been no screaming winds, no divine retribution, only the soft, persistent rustle of change. In time, perhaps, the inhabitants came to accept the sea's encroachment as a kind of covenant. They lived with it, as one lives with an aging relative, with respect, with sadness, and with the quiet understanding that farewell is a matter of when, not if. It is a melancholy notion, yet an oddly peaceful one, that an entire people might have drifted away not in terror, but in weary acceptance. As the low terraces filled, they must have moved inland, carrying the memory of tides with them, their songs still marked by the rhythm of waves long out of sight. What was drowned was not just stone, but cadence, the sudden ruin. Yet there are others who speak of a single night, a convulsion of nature so vast it left no time for farewell. A quake beneath the Yucatan Trench, perhaps, or a collapse of the seabed that sent a vast, dark wave folding upon itself. In this imagining, the city perished not by inches but by heartbeats. Scholars point to sonar maps showing large blocks, dislodged, tilted, broken cleanly, as though by one immense gesture. There is poetry in the idea, though poetry and disaster are uneasy companions. Imagine the sound of that night, the low, drawn breath of the sea before it breaks, the brief, collective silence of those who understood what was coming. Then the sound, not of thunder, but of a wall of water rearranging the known world. It would have been a sound felt more than heard, a pressure that flattened voices and extinguished lamps. Afterward, there would be the stunned stillness of the deep, bubbles rising through ruined courtyards, a child's toy spinning slowly in the current. If this version is true, then the ocean's taking was not gentle but absolute. The city, folded under its own reflections, became an unintentional monument, a frozen echo of symmetry beneath the weight of centuries. Divers who later descend report an uncanny quiet, as though the sea itself were holding its breath, reluctant to disturb what it has kept. The forgotten alignment. A third notion, favored by the speculative and the poetic, holds that the stone structures were never fully human, that they were the sea's own geometry, interpreted as architecture by eyes eager for meaning. One might suppose, as the philosopher Marcellin wrote, that we built not upon the shore, but upon a dream of the shore. In this view, The drowned terraces are the ocean's mimicry, natural formations shaped by the memory of human intent, an echo answering its own caller. There is something profoundly sleep-like in this hypothesis, that civilization and sea are mirrors dreaming each other. Perhaps the people built what they saw in the water's reflection, and when the reflection reclaimed them, the circle was complete. The terraces, then, are both ours and not ours. They belong to the dialogue between curiosity and tide, between creation and erasure. In this way, their disappearance was not an ending, but a homecoming. There is something profoundly sleep-like in this hypothesis, that civilization and sea are mirrors dreaming each other. Perhaps the people built what they saw in the water's reflection, and when the reflection reclaimed them, the circle was complete. The terraces, then, are both ours and not ours. They belong to the dialogue between curiosity and tide, between creation and erasure. In this way, their disappearance was not an ending, but a homecoming. Ambiguity and silence. It is, of course, impossible to know. The data are fragmented, sonar grids blurred by silt, samples contaminated by coral, artifacts displaced by current. The historian must therefore write in tones of hesitation. It may be, one might infer. It is not unreasonable to suppose. Such phrases are not evasions, but a form of reverence. They acknowledge that the sea, in its immensity, will not yield every secret simply because we desire coherence. And yet, the imagination persists. In the Museum of Conjecture, scholars arrange theories as one might arrange shells, by pattern, by tone, by the faint shimmer of plausibility. Each theory sounds different when spoken aloud. The slow submission hums with melancholy patience. The sudden ruin strikes like a drumbeat. The dream hypothesis drifts like seagrass in a current. Together, they create a polyphony of uncertainty, the true music of the drowned. One might walk along the modern Cuban coast and listen to that uncertainty made physical. The waves there do not roar, but murmur, as though rehearsing forgotten syllables. Fishermen's nets sometimes catch stones that seem unnaturally straight. Divers return with fragments that defy simple explanation. Each piece invites speculation, and each speculation deepens the mystery. The mind, left in such company, cannot help but drift between science and legend, between what is known and what is beautifully unknown. In the evenings, when the light grows low and the sea becomes indistinguishable from the sky, one can almost imagine the outlines of the old city beneath the surface. The terraces, the courtyards, the steps leading nowhere. There is no terror in the vision, only a great, enveloping stillness. It is as though the world has paused mid-breath, waiting for memory to finish its sentence. How does one measure a silence that has lasted millennia? Perhaps it is not measured at all, but entered, like a temple whose doors were never meant to close. The sea, in its kindness, keeps such doors open for those who listen, though never for long. It invites, then withdraws. It whispers, then folds the words back into current. Thus, the disappearance of the stone city is less a tragedy than a transformation, from sound into silence, from movement into rest. In its slow or sudden drowning, it became what all human things eventually become: a pattern in water, a memory without witness, a story that must be told in a whisper. And so, the city sleeps beneath its own reflection, not ruined, but at peace. Modern rediscovery. Discovery, one ought to be reminded, is rarely a trumpet. It is more commonly a small, persistent sound that will not be ignored. It arrives as an irritation at first, a fisherman's net heavier than usual, a plow that turns up an odd shard, a child who points at a pale line in the sand and says, almost as if rehearsing, "There was water here once." These are the honest openings of inquiry, domestic noises that, when attended to by an instrument and by patience, accrete into evidence. In our modern age, the first, polite notices often come from above. Satellites, those dispassionate observers, trace the world in bands of color and temperature, and sometimes, in a tone so faint one might miss it if one were not trained, they reveal the skeleton of an ancient shelf. On a winter morning in an office where maps are unrolled with a certain ceremonial economy, a technician will point to a pale, meandering stripe and say, "There is something here." The phrase is modest. It is, as scientists prefer, a preliminary observation. Yet to those who know how scarcity invests a place with meaning, it is tantamount to an invitation. The first stage that follows is the careful listening of instruments. Ground-penetrating radar and sub-bottom profilers emit pulses and receive returns in the manner of a very attentive questioner. The instrument's reply is not a picture but a waveform. It is a little valley of numbers that must be interpreted. A plot appears on a screen, a pale sigil against a dark field, and the analyst leans in. There is a distinct pleasure in such closeness. The click of a mouse, the low whir of a fan, the soft exhale when a line of contrast resolves into the suggestion of a channel. Laboratory rooms thus acquire their own acoustic signatures: the clack of keys, the quiet hum of refrigeration, the soft rustle of printouts. These sounds, so domestic, participate in the grander narrative of recovery. When cores are taken, the tactile element enters decisively. An auger bites into stratigraphy and returns a column of layers like the pages of a very slow book. Hands unwrap the core in a tent or in a vehicle side lab. Gloves whisper against plastic. Tweezers clink. A small brush exhales dust. Each layer is inspected for organic matter, for phytoliths, for the faint charcoal fleck that can be dated by radiocarbon. The discovery of a charred grain, perfectly preserved in its time sediment, produces a particular sort of communal hush, not triumphal, but reverent. People gather around a small sample as one gathers around a candle. There is warmth in the attention. And then there is the sonar, that polite percussion of the deep, which, when arranged into a grid, begins to speak the language of shape. Sonar pings, in their patient repetition, form a kind of slow percussion that, when rendered on a screen, reveal lines and planes where the eye, unaided, might have seen only anonymous benthos. In the case that most summoned the modern conversation about the Cuban features, technicians watched echo returns form patterns with a mixture of curiosity and prudence. Angular echoes repeated with an orderliness that suggested terraces, faces, and, at one point, what appeared to be a linear alignment too regular to be wholly accidental. A remote-operated vehicle, an ROV, is then employed like a very careful hand. The vehicle descends through blue that grows thinner and colder by degrees. Its thumbnails of light reveal a world of slow growths and patient incrustations. The camera records in a grain that is, paradoxically, highly intimate. A flat plane becomes visible, but it is not the sharp masonry of a photograph taken in daylight. The surfaces are softened by coral, by the slow accretion of life. Edges are rounded where current has had its say. Pilots watch with a stillness that borders on devotion. One remembers the sound of the console buttons and the pilot's soft, involuntary intake of breath when the camera tilts and a feature resolves into something that might be a step. But here, and one must say this plainly, is where science does its most humane work, in the slow withholding of certainty. A geologist will point to jointing and to large-scale fracturing. A marine sedimentologist will remind listeners of slump scars and mass transport deposits. An oceanographer will speak of pockmarks and of mud volcanism that can, at certain angles, mimic rectilinear patterns. These explanations arrive in even, mild cadences. This could be consistent with, we must consider, further sampling is required. The measured authority of such phrases is, in my listening, among the most beautiful sounds in modern research. It is the noise of minds refusing premature conclusion. Public mention follows, almost always, in the gentle voice of moderation. A press release will describe unusual seabed features, and journalists, performing their ancient duty of curiosity, will amplify the phrase into headlines whose tenor ranges from intrigue to speculative. The social media whisper that attends such stories is a different kind of sound, brisk, bright, and impatient, and it mingles oddly with the lab's hush. In communities near the sites, the response is quieter and more embodied. Fishermen murmur remembered place names. An elder recalls a tale of a beach that was once deeper. A schoolteacher sees in the maps the landmarks she learned as a child. The dialogue between global speculation and local memory is not a contest so much as a conversation in which different registers of evidence overlap. Sometimes rediscovery moves by accident, and there is a pleasing domesticity to such events. An ordinary morning haul may, when sorted on a beach, reveal an object that resists the fisherman's eye. A smooth face of worked stone, perhaps, or a shard better made than the usual tableware. The object is wrapped and kept. An acquaintance with a university researcher is established. The ripple widens with quiet steps of methodology, measurement, photography, catalog. It is always instructive to observe how gently communities integrate researchers. In the most humane encounters, the academic comes not as conqueror, but as guest, setting up a small tent for analysis, inviting a child to peer into a microscope, recording an elder's recollection in a voice as careful as the recorder itself. Where local knowledge and technical analysis meet, something delicate happens. A fisherman's toponym will often correlate with a sonar anomaly. A legend about a drowned quay corresponds to a datum obtained via core. These alignments do not, romantically, prove the presence of a lost metropolis. They do, however, provide a kind of triangulation that is both scientific and humane. There is, to borrow a phrase, an epistemic reciprocity. Instruments supply patterns. People supply interpretive frames. When they converse, the results are richer than either alone could produce. Ethics presses quietly at every stage. Who speaks for a found sight? Who benefits from its interpretation and from whatever attention it attracts? The best practice, as taught now in ethical archaeology and in community-engaged research, insists upon partnership. Local stakeholders are consulted about display, about sampling, and about the circulation of images. In many cases, the community prefers modest stewardship to the flash of tourism. A small exhibit in a town hall where children can see artifacts accompanied by bilingual labels, rather than a gated walkway with interpretive signs. There are, of course, exceptions and tensions. Occasionally, a find attracts those whose interest is less custodial than mercenary: collectors, developers, and those who would exploit a narrative for profit. The sound of such incursions is harsh. Engine noise, the clatter of heavy machines replacing the softer clicks of cataloging. Good stewardship, by contrast, is the sound of quiet agreement. Hands on paper, signatures, the low murmur of planning that puts preservation before spectacle. Rediscovery, when conducted with care, fosters small cultural renewals. A local crafts collective may revive an old weaving pattern based upon the motifs seen on recovered ceramics. Children in schools may learn to draw maps of the shelf as it once was. Elders may teach lullabies whose phrases name places that sonar echoes now corroborate. Such outcomes are modest but deeply sustaining. Heritage is not, in these instances, an export commodity, but a local resource that enriches identity. The acoustic signature of this phase is gentle and domestic. Session recordings of oral histories, the soft ringing of a school bell on a field day, the measured voices of instructors teaching stratigraphy with simple analogies. There is a peculiar wonder in the way instruments and human memory converse. Sonar beeps and elder songs combine into a composite narrative. The former provides form, the latter provides context. In some cases, the match is uncanny. A fisherwoman's remark about a flat, white stone where currents run, when mapped by a confident sonar grid, reveals a planar feature precisely at the named location. When such correspondences occur, the effect in the field is hushed jubilation, not the sort that wants banners, but the kind that presses hands together in private satisfaction. An ROV pilot will say, long after the cameras are beige with salt and the batteries are cold, that the experience of watching a named place emerge on film is like seeing an old friend step from fog. Yet the technology is fallible, and good scholarship is its antidote. Sonar resolution is limited by depth and by the angle of incidence. Sediment concealment can obscure context. Coral growth can make natural blocks appear like worked faces. Scientists therefore prioritize sampling and peer review. Core samples with consistent dates provide temporal anchors. Petrological analysis of stone may reveal quarry signatures. Microfossil assemblages corroborate paleo-environmental reconstructions. The journals that publish these findings do so in temperate prose, mindful of the tendency of the public imagination to prefer certainty. The published sentence is itself a modest sound, cautious, hedged, generous with ranges and with p-values, as if the author wished to leave space for alternative readings. Inevitably, debates arise. A paper arguing for a primarily geological explanation, jointing, basalt columns, or slump deposits, will be met by another that emphasizes patterns of human activity, aligned blocks that suggest keys, terraces repeated at multiple scales, concentrations of ceramic material. The exchanges are civil, often conducted with a clarity of argument and a courtesy that is itself admirable. Conferences become assemblies of low voices. Over coffee and in session rooms, specialists place their evidence on the table and listen. Sometimes the debate is resolved by fresh data. Often it is not. And that unresolvedness is not failure, but fidelity to complexity. Public discourse, outside journals, is noisier. Popular narratives quickly wrap themselves in mythic forms, invoking lost civilizations or ancient mariners with an appetite for romance. The scholar must then do careful translation to render complexity into accessible nuance without flattening it into cliché. The best communicators achieve a kind of quiet pedagogy. They tell a story that invites wonder, but also models the ethics of caution. Their tone is educational, not sensational, the very music that suits bedtime histories. Practical consequences of rediscovery are varied. Some sites become modest attractions for responsible visitors. Local tourism boards may design interpretive trails that are low impact, with raised walkways and guided tours restricted to small groups. At other sites, the priority is conservation and academic study. Funding follows different logics. Grant agencies respond to demonstrable research potential, while local governments consider economic benefits. The sound of these negotiations is bureaucratic but necessary. Phone calls, meetings, the rustle of grant applications, and often prolonged. Good outcomes, where they occur, are patient and collaborative. There are also moments of ordinary human poignancy that accompany fieldwork. I remember, in my imagining, an occasion when a small clay bowl was found with a smear of carbon still clinging to its rim. It was placed on a simple plank in a community hall, and people gathered to speak about their ancestors' names, reciting kinship ties while a child traced the bowl's lip with a cautious finger. There was no spectacle, only the soft binding of family memory to material object. These are the episodes that grant rediscovery a moral texture. Research that restores dignity rather than treats the past as spectacle. And yet, even as rediscovery enfolds communities and science into a careful choreography, it remains haunted by the sea's own will. Artifacts retrieved from the shelf are corroded, their surfaces altered by years of incrustation. Context has been shifted by currents. Interpretive frames must accommodate disturbance. Sometimes, after a survey, the ROV pilot will report a feature that is so beautifully geometric it arrests conversation. and then a sedimentologist will point out the signatures of a slump event that might have rearranged blocks. The sound of that exchange is not a contradiction, but a dialogue, two respectful voices calibrating meaning. One cannot conclude without speaking of silence, the silence that attends the deep and the silence that follows rediscovery. The seabed, once sampled and described, does not become a fully known domain. It becomes instead an object of continual attention. Instruments must be returned, sites monitored, conservation plans implemented. The hum of conservation work, quiet desalination baths, labeling, and archival scanning, becomes an ongoing, domestic music. It is modest, perhaps bureaucratic, yet it is the very practice by which memory is kept alive. Finally, there is the aesthetic pleasure of the act itself. Watching an ROV's grainy light delineate a plane at depth is, for many, akin to attending a private performance. The small, involuntary exhalations recorded in field notes, "Oh, look there, careful," are the human sounds of wonder that accompany the technical. They are the proofs that curiosity may be gentle, and that attention, when practiced with humility, yields not trophies but understanding. In this joining of instruments and people, technicians and elders, sonar and song, the modern rediscovery of submerged stone becomes less a triumph of conquest than a shared exercise in remembrance. So the site yields slowly, data cohorts, cautious papers, oral histories collected in low voices, school programs that teach children how to read a simple map. A small museum may be founded, not to glitter but to hold, in a cool room, a few chosen fragments wrapped in linen. The community, in time, will tell its grandchildren the tale of how the sea remembers and how people listened. The modern act of rediscovery, then, is not merely about uncovering the past. It is about rehearsing the ethics of attention, a practice of listening that is, in itself, a kind of lullaby for the future. The dusk that gathers over our tale is not sudden. It is a patient folding, a deliberate softening of focus, as though the world itself were lowering its voice to make room for reflection. We leave behind the crisp clicks of instruments, the tentative readings, and the modest triumphs of sampling, and we return to the smaller sounds that make a life legible. The counterweight of a cart on a rutted lane, the small rasp of a hand cord being tied, the muffled murmur of a name remembered and repeated. In these small registers, legacy takes its truest form. There is, to begin, a humility in material traces. A broken rim, the hairline of a repair, the way mineral incrustation follows a vessel's contour. These are not the ostentatious tokens of royal narrative, and that is precisely their eloquence. They tell us of meals eaten with simple ritual, of toys turned over by children with deliberate curiosity, of storage pits emptied and refilled with the season's rhythms. When such objects are retrieved and handled with respect, the moment that follows is quiet and severe in its tenderness. Elders lean forward as if to hear the echo of a voice in the hollow of a bowl, and the room seems to hold a breath that is not the breath of surprise, but of recognition. Domestic institutions, modest and resilient, prove to be the durable vessels of legacy. A small-town cabinet, its shelves lined with labeled finds and a child's drawing pinned beside a conservation report, becomes more meaningful than any distant, showy display. In such places, the public pedagogy is practiced in low tones. School classes that learn to read a simple cross-section of soil, apprenticeships where rope making is taught by an elder who remembers not timing by rhythm, community-led cataloging workshops that demystify the language of samples. Here, knowledge is not exported. It is embedded, grown in the languages and practices of those who live in place. This is a stewardship that privileges continuity over spectacle. The paradox of rediscovery is instructive. To know a site is to commit to a different economy of time. The haste of headlines is replaced by slow, procedural care. Desalination baths take days. Careful labeling requires calm hands. Training local curators is generational work. These practices make sound. The repeated turning of pages, the soft click of a scanner, the hushed consultation of field notes. And these sounds, when they are sustained, form a durable architecture of memory. They are not glamorous noises, but they are the ones that preserve things for the future. We must speak, candidly, of ethics. Who is entrusted with interpretation? Who decides which fragments are shown, and where? The best answers come from shared governance. Local stakeholders involved from the outset, collaborative curation, benefits that flow back into the community in practical forms, funding for local education, opportunities for cultural programming, training for caretakers. When research is carried out as partnership, the soundscape is courteous. Committees meet and converse. Agreements are recorded. Small festivals commemorate stewardship rather than spectacle. The alternative, where artifacts are removed and decisions are made without consent, is a harsh, discordant noise. Engines at dawn, heavy equipment, hurried extraction. Such sounds are invasive, and their consequences are corrosive to trust. Language, too, carries legacy. Place names are repositories of environmental knowledge. A toponym that survives as a lullaby phrase, the shallow bend, the reed bank, encodes where one might dig a well, where a channel runs deep at low tide, what reed signals safe footing. When such terms are reintroduced into schooling, they operate as mnemonic devices that guide practice. Oral histories, taped and archived, preserve not merely facts but the cadences of speech, the metaphors, the instructive pauses that cannot be captured by data alone. These recorded voices are themselves artifacts, fragile and priceless, and their preservation is an act of moral fidelity. There are also aesthetic legacies. The way motifs recovered on pottery inform modern weavers' patterns, the adaptation of an old stitch into a contemporary textile, the inclusion of a recovered lullaby in a festival's repertoire. These expressions are not mere nostalgia, they are acts of cultural continuity. They assert that the past, when treated with reverence, becomes a living vocabulary for present creativity. The sound of artisans at work in such contexts, looms breathing slowly, needles tapping in measured time, singers softening lines to match new voices, is a kind of rejoinder to oblivion. Practical pedagogy emerges as a form of ethical intervention. Field days for children, community mapping workshops, apprenticeships in material conservation. These are the quotidian means by which knowledge enters civic practice. A child who learns to identify a potter's thumbprint or to sketch a buried bank transforms abstract pastness into an embodied skill. That child grows into a steward who values depth over flash, who will argue for local conservation funding not as an economic windfall, but as the maintenance of communal memory. These are small ripples, but they accumulate. It is worth saying, with measured candor, that not all outcomes of rediscovery are benign. External interests may clamor for commodification, and pressures for tourism constrain limited infrastructures. The sound of heavy footfall, guided buses, and relentless narration threatens to overwhelm the local quiet. Thoughtful governance thus includes impact assessments, limits on visitor numbers, and investment in local capacity. When managed with restraint, tourism can help local economies and support conservation. When mismanaged, it reduces heritage to spectacle. The preferable sound is one of measured visitation, low-voiced guides, small groups, interpretive materials that are portable and sensitive. Conservation science, too, contributes to the palette of legacy. The careful process of cleaning, stabilizing, and documenting objects is a labor of affection. Conservators describe the work as a series of small economies. How long to soak, how gently to brush, when to halt and reassess. The laboratory becomes a sanctum of patient sounds, the soft clink of glass tools, the whisper of distilled water, the ambient hum of climate control. And in those measured sounds there is a kind of ethical music. We are asking the past to persist, and we do so without urgency or spectacle. Perhaps most moving are the human moments that punctuate this work. A child draws a map of a once waterway and names it after a grandmother's song. An elder, invited to inspect a sherd, traces a groove with a finger and smiles at the recognition of a pattern. A local artist uses a motif from a recovered bowl as the central pattern for a communal weaving, and the pattern becomes a symbol for a future that honors the past. These episodes are small, domestic, and they create bonds that transcend professional boundaries. They are the proof that rediscovery can be reparative, connecting lives and reweaving social threads. And yet, even in the best of outcomes, ambiguity remains our companion. Not every pattern can be decisively read. Not every sonar line will resolve into a tidy narrative. This uncertainty is not a failing, but an invitation. It calls for a politics of gentleness, the willingness to hold multiple hypotheses in mind, the patience to await further data, and the humility to accept that the sea will always be a partner with its own priorities. In this posture, curiosity is not a plunder, but a practice of listening. As the voice that speaks to you lowers itself toward finish, imagine once more the shelf at night, a field of muted tones where light moves like a slow hand, and where coral and stone have begun their patient work of incrustation. Imagine the ROV's beam, a private lantern that traces a plane and then glides on. Imagine the lab's soft lamps. Imagine a child's pencil scraping paper in a shaded classroom. These images are small and particular. They are not meant to resolve the great questions, but to remind us of how attention and care are performed. If, as you lie listening, your breath begins to slacken and your eyelids fall, know that this is precisely the aim. Allow your inhalation to lengthen as if matching a sonar's slow rhythm. Hold for a moment as if listening to an echo, then release without hurry. The story's unresolved edges are not to worry at, but to cradle. They are an ethic of humility, a recognition that the world keeps certain things kindly hidden until we have learned to listen well. Finally, let there be a small admonition. Treat remembered places with domestic care. Do not rush them into commercial prominence. Do not demand certainties where only shards persist. Sit with the smallness of finds. Cherish the names that elders recall. Teach children the counting songs that tether labor to rhythm. In such practices, we perform a quiet fidelity that is itself a kind of sanctuary. Rest now, and let the sea keep its patient counting. There are stones that remember fingers. There are songs that remember tides. There are children yet to learn the measure of waves. For a little while, be their companion in listening. Let the last sound you hold be the slow, polite ping, a small, steady note that marks out a rhythm, and that, when followed, leads gently into sleep.